Thank you, choir. I appreciate your voices, and I remember when I had one as strong as maybe some of you. Very quickly, I'm not a pastor. I do not work for Samaritan's Purse. I'm just an individual. I represent no one, but I am a follower of Jesus Christ. You are here from the Southern Sudanese churches in Calgary. You're Christians. You're my brothers and sisters in Christ. I feel like this is a family get-together. And as you can see, I'm a fairly old man, and old men are very happy when their families are together. I want to just very quickly, but very from my heart, thank the people who organized this service. That's not easy to do. I know the conflicts of working hours and sickness and many things, but you have done this, and you've done it with the passion that I've already heard the speaker say, and the reasons for which you've done it. I really thank you, and I'm proud of you. I also want to thank my colleagues at the back, my good friends at the back who are with Samaritan's Purse. John Clayton, Ron Travadillo, Dorothy Weiss, and I'm not sure who gal is in the orange. I'm short-sighted, I think. We are blessed with what Samaritan's Purse has done by being in Calgary. And I'm so happy that I happen to live in Calgary and they are accessible. I know what they've done in southern Sudan long before I got involved in Sudan. And I'm very grateful for what they've done and how they've made their facilities available for today. It was very hard to find a place the day before Easter to meet. Speaking of Samaritan's Purse, Luke 10, verses 30 through 37 has the story of the Good Samaritan. And that is an important passage and a motivator for me as well to try to be an ambassador for Christ and reach out to those who many others would not be aware of or concerned about. I'm aware of the situation in southern Sudan. I'm watching the internet on a couple of different sites at least twice a day, so I know what is going on there. My heart goes out to all of you who have lost people back there, and the services that we call funerals that are being held for such. I've had the opportunity of being in southern Sudan several times. I love to be in a service where people are worshiping and praising to God, and I have no idea what they're saying. But I know women can ululate. That lifts the spirits. I'm going to be brief. You've come to Canada, and I know the situation in Canada. Canada is a very different country from when I was a boy. And you've come here at a time when it's very difficult to raise your children. The environment has changed. The beliefs have changed. Canada also in many ways is rejecting God, or turning our backs on God, as Lino mentioned. And I know you struggle with raising your family here because of that. You come from a different culture. You come into this culture, and there are problems, and I'm aware of them. I want to very briefly tell one quick story. And this is not Sudanese people, but there was a woman in Toronto who saw one day, she was a compassionate Christian, and she saw a woman, presumably from the Middle East, perhaps Northern Africa, she had her head covered, and she was walking and trying to carry groceries, and she could see that she was struggling. So she just asked her husband, "Stop the car, let's give her a lift." So they stopped the car and they motioned for her, and the woman looked over and kept on walking and ignored them. Rolled down the window and called and said, "Come, we'll drive you where you need to go." And she ignored them. She got out of the car and went beside and said, "Please come, you're struggling, we'll drive you." She just shook her head and kept walking. She went back to the car and told her husband, "Just follow me." And she got out and walked with the woman and said, "Please let me help carry." She let her help carry, and they walked to where the woman was living in silence. when they got to the door and she handed the packages back, the woman said, "Why do you do this?" And I'll stop the story there. But I want to also say, and I believe if my memory serves correctly, these stories connect. Because I know people who've worked with some ethnic communities, these are not Southern Sudanese, and they discovered that in that community, the women were illiterate. From the culture they came from, they were responsible for the upbringing of their children. The children would come home from school, they've got the challenges of learning English, they've got the challenges of being a visible minority. And the expectation from the teachers is that the parents are going to help the children with the homework. And so I've talked to the people who would sit on the beds beside these women who were crying. They feel trapped in their apartment, in these big buildings where they live. They are pressured by the community, by their husbands, and they themselves are illiterate. How can they help their children with the homework? The good news is there were people of goodwill who came alongside and began to help and make a difference. So please, I am so pleased that you have taken the effort that you have to have this service, and I trust that you're going to find some Canadians as well who've been here longer that will be happy to help you, and especially happy to help you when they don't see themselves being divided because you're only helping this group or only helping that group. So I want to just introduce, there will be one video. This is the video of Mel Middleton, who lives in British Columbia. He would love to have been here today. He was born as a missionary's child in Ethiopia. He was raised there. His skin color is similar to mine, but he's an African. That's where his heart is. He has a tremendous love for the Sudanese people. Please just hear my good friend, Mel Middleton, and thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Mel Middleton. I greet you all in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. Thank you so much for being here today. I pray that God will richly bless you. Many of you may remember me from the demonstrations we used to have in Calgary when we were advocating for the human rights of the people of Southern Sudan. I grew up in Ethiopia and have lived and worked in Sudan and South Sudan for over 10 years. I've worked with NGOs, the UN, the Canadian High Commission, and for years prayed and worked hard for peace. We've agonized in prayer that God would deliver the people of South Sudan from the bondage of suffering that they've experienced for so long. Now, as we all know, South Sudan has once again fallen into a dark web of suffering. And what we foresee in the near future, if present trends continue, is a nightmare that we cannot even begin to imagine. The UN has issued a warning that 3.7 million people are at risk of starvation in South Sudan. According to UNICEF, 250,000 children are facing severe acute malnutrition now, and over 50,000 are already at serious risk of death. They say if the conflict continues and farmers miss the planting season, we will see child malnutrition on a scale we've never seen before. These are not mere statistics. These are the children for whom South Sudan holds so much potential and promise. We must not fail the children of this new and fragile nation. Friends, this is why I'm so happy that you're here today, because this present trend of suffering does not have to continue. There's a Sudanese proverb which says, "The night may be very dark, but the morning always comes." C.S. Lewis, one of the greatest Christian statesmen in the 20th century, said that God whispers in our triumphs, but he shouts in our suffering. Tomorrow we celebrate Easter. Imagine how the disciples of Jesus must have felt the day after the crucifixion and the day before that first Easter almost 2,000 years ago to this day. Their Messiah, the one for whom they had left everything, the one on whom they had placed all their hopes for the future, had just been cruelly executed on the cross. Only a week before, they had been celebrating the coming of their new king. But now all their dreams had been dashed to pieces. What despair, what heartbreak. And just like it is for us today, that day before the first Easter was a very dark night for those first disciples. But then, the morning did come. Christ arose from the dead, and that resurrection changed everything. Death itself had been swallowed up in victory. God had turned the darkest despair into the most radiant and glorious light in the history of the world. The God who gave us that victory over death itself can also perform a miracle today in South Sudan if we cry out to Him for it. In 2 Chronicles 7:14 it says, "If my people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and will heal their land." When we turn to God for answers, even miracles, He can turn our darkest tragedies into triumph for His name. He can heal our broken lives. He can heal our broken homes, our families, and He can heal the land of South Sudan. May God bless you as we all pour our hearts out